Carrie Lam talks about housing and LGBT rights in her LegCo Q&A. China calls on WTO member nations to stand up to what it calls trade bullying. And Donald Trump says NATO ties very strong after a new row over defense spending.
Good evening and welcome. Chief Executive Carrie Lam has been talking about housing in her question and answer session in the Legislative Council today. She also talked about LGBT rights, telling lawmakers if they think Hong Kong is ready to discuss equal rights for same-sex couples, they should prove it. Winnie Wong tells us more.
Another question and answer session for Chief Executive Carrie Lam at LegCo. In light of her recent announcements on the housing issue, questions raised by lawmakers today naturally veered towards that direction as well. The Civic Party's Jeremy Tam asked the CE why the new territory's small house policy remains, despite the land shortage problem.
When you were the Secretary for Development, you said you are a tough fighter. And you said that it's not possible for the small house policy to remain forever. Now you are the Chief Executive, but you made no mention of a review of the small house policy. Is it because you dare not take up the fight, or you don't want to take up the fight?
Lam replied that the small house policy has been in place for more than 40 years. Since a judicial review has now been launched against it, she did not think it's appropriate for the government to comment. A recent controversial Court of Final Appeal ruling was also brought up in the chamber. Last week, the city's top court rejected an appeal by the Immigration Department and ruled in favor of a lesbian expatriate over her dependent visa application.
In society, there is a lot of debate as to whether this case will become a precedent in that we are giving recognition to civil union entered into in overseas countries, so that in a way we are legalizing same-sex marriage. This case has nothing to do with any challenge against Hong Kong's marriage ordinance. It is just about the enforcement of immigration policy by the direction of immigration.
But this answer in turn offended other lawmakers.
Mrs. Lam, are you still saying that the QT case is just an immigration issue and not LGBT equal rights issue? If that's the case, are you saying that the administration will not take the initiative to tackle discrimination? If you're of the view that in Hong Kong we have already forged a broad consensus to do what you think we should do, then please prove it to me.
Winnie Wong, TVB News.
Beijing has urged all members of the World Trade Organization to stand up to what it calls Washington's trade bullying. That's after the United States threatened to slap tariffs on another $200 billion worth of Chinese products. Consumers are set to become the primary casualties in the escalating trade war between the world's two biggest economies. Jeff Tang reports.
A lot of huge numbers are thrown around as Beijing and Washington engage in tit-for-tat tariff hikes that could soon affect hundreds of billions of US dollars worth of goods. But perhaps the only numbers that consumers care about are, how much more do I have to pay for groceries? American families are already bracing themselves for more expensive trips to the supermarket, hardware store and even the garage. But that's not all. Analysts are warning that Washington's potential 10% duty on thousands more Chinese goods worth $200 billion could result in part of the extra costs being passed on to consumers. American households could soon pay more for predominantly Chinese-made doors, windows, air conditioning units, fridges, stoves, and even utensils, just to name a few. Beijing, which had vowed that it would fight back against Washington's trade bullying, defended its trade practices at a World Trade Organization meeting in the Swiss city of Geneva. This comes as China's trade policies are up for a regular review by the WTO. Vice Commerce Minister Wang Shouwen urged all WTO members to defend their multilateral trading system.
We would like to call on all WTO members to resolutely defend the fundamental principles and core values of the multilateral trading system, including MFN, national treatment, and special and differential treatment for developing members, and to firmly stand up to trade bullying, protectionism, and unilateralism.
Wang also called on all WTO members to tackle the threats posed by the Trump administration's tariffs on steel, aluminium and cars, as well as the levies directed solely at China. But at the same conference, the US ambassador to the WTO accused Beijing of causing harm to WTO partners by failing to live up to free trade practices. While Wall Street tanked overnight as US investors fretted over the escalating trade war, Asian investors banked on a short-lived conflict. Stock markets in Hong Kong and China all ended higher as investors hunted for bargain stocks that plunged in value over the last few days. Jeff Tang, TVB News.
Well, the trade war between Washington and Beijing could be why Liu Xia regained her freedom, according to a German professor. The widow of Chinese Nobel Peace Laureate Liu Xiaobo is said to be doing well in Berlin after leaving China 2 days ago. Elmi Lung reports.
Liu Xia left China on Tuesday and settled down temporarily at a hotel in Berlin. She's been able to eat and sleep better, her younger brother Liu Hui told us in a phone interview. Liu Xia's arrival in the German capital ended around 8 years of house arrest. She has been confined to her home since 2010, the year her husband Liu Xiaobo was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. Since then, numerous calls on Beijing to release the poet who suffers from depression. Some think her release may help China garner support from the West to counter the United States in their escalating trade dispute.
It's ultimately all about trade and the economy. The United Kingdom is totally absorbed in Brexit, and there would be much less of an ear for China than in Germany. Both Germany and China are under some pressure from the United States because of the trade and the trade wars and the increase in tariffs.
On Friday, a memorial service will be held inside a Berlin church to mark the first anniversary of Liu Xiaobo's death.
Liu Xiaobo wasn't helped early enough in this disease, and he couldn't get the medical support he had to get. But there will also be a positive part because for Liu Xia, things are changing now and she can get the medical support she needs. So this will be the thankful part of the service.
Taiwanese media reported that German authorities had granted Liu Xia indefinite leave to remain in the country. Elmi Long, TVB News.
More details are emerging about the dangerous and incredible rescue of 12 Thai boys and their soccer coach from a flooded cave. An American diver involved in that perilous zero-visibility operation described it as a once-in-a-lifetime rescue. Alan Booknia reports.
Ecstatic relatives watched and waved from behind a glass barrier as the boys remain in isolation. Despite wearing masks, it was obvious they were smiling as they waved back. All will be monitored for a week, then they'll rest at home for 30 days. 3 of the boys have lung infections. The 12 boys, aged between 11 and 16, and their 25-year-old coach had been trapped since June 23rd. They were brought out of the partly flooded 4-kilometer cave system in a 3-day operation that ended Tuesday.
I think the world just needs to know that what was accomplished was a once-in-a-lifetime rescue.
Anderson said the decision to make the dangerous underwater journey through the cave system with children who couldn't even swim was made because not only did monsoon rains threaten to flood the cave even more, but oxygen was running out.
The condition of the air in the cave was deteriorating, so that really started to kind of put a sense of urgency with one, realizing that the long-term survivability of the boys in the cave was becoming a less and less feasible option.
Anderson said the boys endured dives of zero visibility for up to a half an hour through long passageways barely wider than an adult body. The director of the hospital in Chiang Rai says that, given the more than 2-week ordeal, the boys appeared to be strong, both physically and mentally. Alan Burkney, TVB News.
U.S. President Donald Trump says NATO allies have committed to raising their defense spending beyond 2%. The remarks follow Trump's renewed pressure tactics on NATO nations to boost spending during a second day of meetings in Brussels. Yesterday, Trump tore into NATO leaders with lectures over the amounts their countries pay for their own military defense. Accusations, insults, and demands as Donald Trump stormed into this week's NATO summit in Europe. Trump has been questioning the value of a military alliance that has defined decades of American foreign policy. Under fire for his embrace of Russian President Vladimir Putin, Trump turned a harsh spotlight on Germany's own ties to Russia. During a breakfast meeting with the NATO Secretary General, Trump alleged that a natural gas pipeline venture means Germany is paying billions of dollars to Moscow for energy that is making it captive to Russia.
But Germany is totally controlled by Russia because they were getting from 60 to 70% of their energy from Russia and a new pipeline. And you tell me if that's appropriate, because I think it's not. And I think it's a very bad thing for NATO.
Later, at a meeting on the sidelines of the summit with German Chancellor Angela Merkel, Trump said,
"We have a very, very good relationship with the Chancellor. We have a tremendous relationship with Germany."
For her part, Merkel dismissed Trump's earlier remarks, saying Germany is in control of its own decisions. Trump also demanded that allies double what they pay to their own defense budgets to 4% of their gross domestic product. That's a bigger share than even the U.S. currently pays, according to NATO statistics. However, a formal summit declaration issued by the NATO leaders yesterday reaffirmed their commitment to the earlier 2% pledge and made no reference to any effort to get to 4%. The diplomatic drama is certain to continue. Before he meets with Russian President Vladimir Putin on Monday, Trump heads to London, where he'll meet with Queen Elizabeth II and British Prime Minister Theresa May. May's government is mired in turmoil over how to exit the European Union following the Brexit vote.
The U.S. government has missed a deadline to reunite migrant children under the age of 5 with their families. This comes as the Trump administration insists the delay is aimed at protecting the kids. Tears of joy for this immigrant dad upon being reunited with his son.
He's happy to finally be able to be with his child. He had 55 days of not seeing him.
This Guatemalan migrant cries, saying he's been separated from his 6-year-old for so long, his son asks, "Don't you love me anymore?" This Honduran asylum seeker joined a class action lawsuit challenging family separations because her 6-year-old is still in federal custody. The U.S. government admits only 38 of 102 migrant children under 5 years old were reunited with their families by the July 11th court-ordered deadline. In addition, the court had given a 1-month deadline for the reunification of older kids. This came on the heels of a lawsuit filed against the Justice Department's zero-tolerance policy for those caught crossing the U.S. border illegally. But critics insist separating children is cruel and unnecessary. The Trump administration explains the reason they're not meeting the deadline is they have to protect the children. At issue is many children are snatched and used as pawns to get across the border. This has been proven when a child's DNA fails to match that of either parent. Other reasons include ensuring it's safe to release children to parents with criminal records or their parents haven't completed the verification process. Critics are expressing outrage, but the fact remains when U.S. citizens break laws in America, they're also separated from their children because they're incarcerated. President Donald Trump made it clear there is a way to solve the problem once and for all.
Well, I have a solution. Tell people not to come to our country illegally. That's the solution.
Still ahead on tonight's news. Veteran local politician Frederick Funk leaves the party he founded. Police arrest 31 people in a suspected London gold investment scam.
一見到英文就灰到暈。加油 ，keep your chin up。唔使咁灰，只要喺 EF English Centres 學英文，就可以用我哋嘅學習 Apps，隨時隨地同外籍老師直接對話學英文，就好似帶住個小老師喺身咁。EF English Centres 嘅英語課程除咗網上課堂之外，我哋嘅外籍英語老師就會同學生一齊參與英語社交活動，幫你輕鬆掌握英語。
Welcome back. Veteran politician Frederick Fung has left the party he founded. But will that present him with greater freedom to run in the upcoming Legislative Council by-election to make a political comeback? Here's Christy Lung.
After more than 30 years, it's over. Frederick Fung announced this afternoon he is leaving the Association for Democracy and People's Livelihood, or ADPL. He aims to set up a new pressure group instead.
The strategies and even the actions, I think, may be different to a party. The values between I and ADPO is not much difference. I should say we are the same. But when you are a party, as a party, you have to do many things that will divert your effort, concentration.
It doesn't mean Fung will completely cut ties with the party he founded.
We are sure that there will be opportunities for us to fight for democracy, to fight for the people's livelihood in the coming future.
The 65-year-old's departure got some wondering if it means he will take another shot in running for a Lashko seat. In November, a by-election will be held to fill the seat left vacant by the disqualification of Lau Siu Lai.
Because you have said before during primary elections that you will not run again. If not, why do you think people will care?
I still insist that you want to talk about the pre-elections or anything about elections. Please, I do have another platform.
Fung vowed to keep pressing the government on social issues like housing and healthcare. Christy Lung, TVB News.
Police have arrested 31 people who are believed to have been duped by victims of $26 million in a gold investment scam. Pinky Wong has more.
Police raided 2 investment companies in Wan Chai and North Point yesterday. There, they arrested 21 men and 10 women, aged between 18 and 53. Police believe 3 of the people rounded up are the masterminds of a syndicate. Fancy cars, luxury handbags, and gold watches were among items confiscated in the operation. The scam team included attractive women who sweet-talked potential victims into making so-called investments in London gold. One victim reported losses of $1.8 million.
Those female financial consultants would make false representation to those victims, claiming that the investment involved low risk, high returns, or even achieve a break-even situation.
The luxurious lifestyle of these female brokers presented online was aimed at showing their success.
Attractive female consultants, they will use around few days to few months to cause loss to those investment accounts.
Police said the questionable company would set up another new firm if complaints start pouring in. Police said just yesterday another 30 men called their hotline for help. Not all of the callers live in Hong Kong though, as some are from Taiwan and Singapore. Pinky Wong, TVB News.
Britain's information regulator has slapped Facebook with a fine for breaches of data protection law. The fine totals $663,000. It was assessed by the UK Information Commissioner's Office. The penalty represents the first move by a regulator to punish Facebook. This after millions of users had their personal data improperly accessed by consultancy firm Cambridge Analytica. While the penalty is small for Facebook, it is the maximum amount allowed. It's also considered a warning shot for companies that now face fines of up to 2% of global revenue under European Union data protection regulations recently rolled out. The company has promised to introduce reforms to its policies before local elections in Britain next year. From all of us, thanks for joining us.
Bye for now.